President Trump signed Friday a new executive order empowering the federal government to fight more vigorously against human trafficking.
I've also prioritized increasing funding for anti-trafficking efforts in my 2021 budget, allocating $70 million toward enhanced prosecutions, and at the Department of Justice, we are spending $123 million towards supporting state and local efforts.
A new position on the White House domestic policy team will focus on combating human trafficking at the federal level. The administration pledges to take on this issue on an international scale as well.
We enacted bills to fight sex trafficking, increase support for survivors, and raise the standards by which we judge whether other countries are meeting their duty to fight human trafficking.
So now we're going to monitor other countries' efforts to fight or support human trafficking. Sounds noble, huh? Extremely noble. Stay tuned.
Several human rights organizations boycotted the Friday White House Summit on Trafficking, criticizing the Trump administration for abandoning victims of trafficking among the immigrant population. One of them, Refugee International, says in a statement that Trump immigration policies endanger victims of trafficking and erode hard-won protections for trafficking victims that were authorized by Congress and implemented over the past decade. President Trump has linked his push for tougher immigration policies with his anti-trafficking crusade, claiming that illegal migrants are perpetrators of kidnapping and exploitation of women and children.
Once again, sounds noble, huh? Hold on, hold your breath. It's coming. It's coming.
Known as modern slavery, human trafficking is a major human rights concern around the world. According to the most recent figures by the International Labour Organization, 24.9 million people worldwide are in forced labor or victims of sex trafficking. Mistakenly seen as a phenomenon of unstable societies with weak institutions, human trafficking is present in virtually every corner of the globe. In the next 6 months, federal agencies involved in anti-trafficking efforts are to present concrete proposals to implement the president's plans as laid out in his new executive order.
So all that is a bunch of blah, 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 blah that has to do with a bunch of immigrant adults. How does this affect the immigrant children? I'll show you.
While the Pentagon has paused all domestic travel for the military, while everyone is working from home, while we were then on the brink of instituting a shelter-in-place policy, you still have ICE that's trafficking children across the country.
Was there guidance about transporting these children?
I was called by a community organization, New Sanctuary Coalition, and there was an anonymous tip that there were 6 young children being transported by ICE into New York City in the middle of a coronavirus outbreak. And I had gotten this call on a late Saturday night, and I was asked, can you go to LaGuardia right now? So we hop in, I rushed to LaGuardia Airport, and I just took all of my congressional credentials with me, and I just waited outside of the gate where families come out of the airport. And I waited there until I saw an ICE agent with about 6 young children with him.
Who are you with?
I'm the congresswoman.
The thing is, I'm not allowed to talk to you.
Is there a supervisor in Do these minors have representation?
As far as attorneys?
Yes. Or do you know where they're being transported?
I do. I can't tell you.
Okay. Was there guidance about transporting these children?
That's when we started to realize that, meanwhile, while the Pentagon has paused all domestic travel for the military, while everyone is working from home, while we while we were then on the brink of instituting a shelter-in-place policy, you still have ICE that's trafficking children across the country.
So is this unimportant information now because of the coronavirus and self-quarantines? Should we just kick back and assume it's not happening anymore because people aren't coming outside? I think not. This just happened in April.
In Portsmouth today, police raided the home of a well-known lawyer suspected of running a national sex trafficking ring for years. Local 12's James Pilcher has been investigating the case, and he shows us what led to this raid.
Today's action is the first public acknowledgement of a criminal investigation into Michael Moran, a former city councilman in Portsmouth, Ohio. Local and state investigators searched his house that also serves as his office today, but did not arrest him. Keith Henson works in the area and shot this video. I reported on Moran and sex trafficking in that southern Ohio city for nearly 2 years while working at the Cincinnati Enquirer. More than a dozen women accused Moran of coercing them into sex for money as part of a national operation. Those women say he promised more lenient sentences or help with their drug habits to lure them into trips across the country to meet with other men. The investigation into Moran has been going on for 2 years. The Attorney General is leading the investigation, but that office today declined comment. Angela Clemente provided this picture with Moran in the middle.
So at the end of the day, this fool didn't even get it arrested. Like, where they do that at? Here in the U.S. Watch out now. Now, before we get into the next clip, I just want to let you know that I do have a serious lisp going on today because I have an extremely bad tooth. It seriously needs to be pulled, but thanks to social distancing, I can't seem to find a dentist. Hopefully, that'll work itself out Monday, as in tomorrow. Until then, bear with my little lisp. So that's happening right here in this country. What's going on with the migrant children here in the U.S.? U.S. immigration officials have rapidly deported nearly 400 migrant children intercepted at U.S.-Mexican border in the past 2 weeks under new rules billed as seeking to limit the spread of the novel coronavirus in the United States. President Donald Trump's administration implemented new border rules on March 21st. Remember that? That scrapped decades-long practices under laws meant to protect children from human trafficking and offer them a chance to seek asylum in a U.S. immigration court. Under the new rules, U.S. officials can quickly remove people without standard immigration proceedings. Overall, U.S. border officials have expelled nearly 7,000 migrants to Mexico since the new procedures took place. Of those, 377 were minors. Around 120 of the minors who arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border without a parent or legal guardian were quickly sent on planes back to Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. It was not clear, now mind you, this happened between March 27th and April 2nd. We didn't hear anything about that. We were too busy screaming about the coronavirus. It was not clear whether the remainder of the children intercepted at the border were pushed back to Mexico or returned to their home countries during the preceding week. So we don't even know where these children are. Like literally. Before the pandemic of COVID-19, unaccompanied minors caught at the border were placed in shelters run by U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Children traveling without adults other than their parents or legal guardians would also be classified as unaccompanied and put into HHS care, even if the adults they were traveling with were family members. Under the new rules, however, they are now called single minors. Really? and can be sent back to Mexico, according to a CBP official. Trump has made cracking down on immigration a central goal of his administration, and before the global health crisis, the White House had criticized the process for handling unaccompanied minors as a loophole that allows the release of minor children into the U.S. Now, pay attention to this part, because somehow we forgot about Trump's wall altogether, and now it's all about this. Trump said last month that foreigners attempting to enter the country illegally could spread the coronavirus to border agents and other migrants and the U.S. public, a concern that he said justified quickly turning them around without standard legal process. The current treatment of minors happens to coincide with a long-term goal of the Trump administration of quickly removing all migrants apprehended at the border. As more children have been denied entry at the border, the number of unaccompanied minors in federal custody has also fallen. Did you hear that? How is that possible? Please explain to me how all of a sudden the number of children we have in HHS custody has fallen. Like, where did the kids go? Where are they? The HH office charged with caring for unaccompanied minors in the U.S. said there were roughly 2,800 children in custody on Monday, down from 3,100 5 days earlier. That means 300 kids disappeared within 5 days. And these aren't kids being released out of social services or hospitals. They were in custody. Where in the hell are they? As of April 2nd, 5 children in HHS care had tested positive for COVID-19 out of 23 who had been tested overall. So let's try to wrap our heads around these numbers. I had to put my calculator out for this one here. So you have 3,100 children, and now we only have 2,800 children. That's 300 missing. Out of the entire 3,100, only 23 were tested. That is 0.076%. So that's not even 1% of them were tested. And of that 23, only 5 had it. So let's, 0.2%. So what's that? 1/5 of them had it. Okay, so here's my ultimate question. Of the 2,800 children that we can still say we know where they are, 23 were tested. That leaves 2,777 that weren't. So how does this become such an emergency situation that we have to just start getting rid of these children? 2,777 weren't tested. That's 0.99. That's 99%. 99% of them were not tested. But somehow this is an emergency situation and we have to literally just start getting rid of these children. And they can't, we're not even gonna make them tell us where the hell they're taking them.
We're in unprecedented times.
For weeks, the Community Coalition Against Human Trafficking looked to nonprofits in New York to develop a pandemic plan.
As a community and as a society, we're all in this together. This is not something that's happening to us individually.
The coalition is having advocates work remotely, maintaining programs, one being teletherapy for survivors.
Our population that we're probably most concerned about are the kids that we serve, particularly our teenagers. You know, they might really be in a very rural population, and we know for those kids in particular that school can be a real lifeline for them. And if the child doesn't have an internet connection, we are concerned about losing just that open line of communication with them.
That's why advocates are paying attention to what's going on at a survivor's home and making sure they're able to have a safe conversation.
The reality of trafficking in East Tennessee is that the victims almost always know their trafficker. And so it could be that a victim is quarantined at home with a trafficker.
Ain't that about a... Let's hear that again for the people in the back.
And so it could be that a victim is quarantined at home with a trafficker. This quarantine does not mean that you are trapped or locked in an unsafe house.
One silver lining during this pandemic has come down to technology.
We were able to facilitate a training last week with BCS. We had over 500 individuals across the state attend that training virtually. That's not something I don't think we could have done during regular work hours. So that was super powerful.
And so there's still hope for survivors and the coalition's mission to end trafficking.
It's a lot to balance, but I think that I just feel incredibly grateful. There are a lot of silver linings in this very strange and scary time. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to take advantage of things that we otherwise might not be doing.
So as you know, nonprofits are funded by supporters and the government. So now, of course, government funding is going to disappear for charities like this. But guess what? The joke's on their asses, because guess what? People like her are going to still do it for free. That part.
A deadly coronavirus pandemic may be keeping most people indoors and their mouth and nose covered if they must venture outside, but Love's Arm founder and director Mimi Nichols says coronavirus is not preventing some people from soliciting sex on the street.
When we're in a situation where people are being forced to stay in their homes or to stop doing business as usual, the desire to participate in addictive behaviors such as feeding their sexual urges actually increased.
I hope you caught that.
Nichols says based on her intel, pimps and sex traffickers are stepping up their operation to make sure people with sex addictions get what they want, even if it means spreading coronavirus to the women who are being trafficked or having the virus spread to the customers.
We saw many men in trucks and cars driving through the streets. And we saw several pimps out there making dates for girls.
She also says she saw proof that none of the people involved in this illegal activity is taking precautions to prevent the spread of coronavirus, which doctors now say can spread by simply breathing on someone.
No one's wearing masks who are coming out to purchase sex, and no one's wearing masks who are providing for those sexual favors. Think about what you are doing to yourself, to other people, and the potential you are bringing into your homes and your families. Just stop and think about it.
Problem is, it's not always by choice.
In other news, a Border Patrol agent has been arrested on child sex charges. Sierra Vista Police worked with Homeland Security investigators to arrest 49-year-old Dana Thornhill. He faces counts of sexual conduct with a minor and sexual assault. He's being held without bond in the Cochise County Jail.
He works for Border Patrol. That means he's a federal employee. However, the feds didn't take him down. Get it? He's in a county jail.
The most vulnerable members of society, COVID-19 makes it harder and harder to get resources and help. KXAN's Jacqueline Powell explains how advocates say the pandemic has made it harder for victims of human trafficking and other types of abuse to get out of dangerous situations.
Like much of the country, call takers for the National Human Trafficking Hotline are working from home, still taking the same amount of calls, but of a different nature.
People just aren't really out in their communities observing very much right now. However, we are getting a lot of calls from people who are experiencing trafficking, and they're having a really hard time finding help.
Corinne Arkin manages the hotline's call response. She says economic instability breeds the type of vulnerability that sex and labor traffickers prey on. Amid that, there's less help available than usual.
So a lot of shelters, for obvious health and safety reasons, are full or are not able to take on new clients.
The national hotline says required health screenings and transportation logistics are also causing delays.
Sometimes shelters will be able to hold a bed for somebody, but only for a specific period of time, maybe for 48 hours. And then if you can't get there within that time, the bed might be given to someone else who needs it. So if you can't get a flight or if you can't get a bus and you can't show up there, then you're just out of luck.
In Austin, nonprofit SAFE says its shelters are full, and backup shelters have had to limit their capacities to meet social distancing requirements.
Nearly all the shelters that we use, we're not taking any new clients.
Safe employees can no longer meet victims at the hospital or in person at all.
We are doing it through phone, social media, whatever the platform is that our survivors are most comfortable with.
Advocates stress it's still vital that victims of trafficking or abuse call in so they can start working on a plan.
We still have that connection, and we can work on safety planning and navigating those services the best we can for you.
What good does that do? I mean, no offense to her or anyone else like her, but at the end of the day, social distancing dictates that these women can't go anywhere. So even if they feel like they need to leave, they can't. They're literally stuck and quarantined with their abusers. And what about the kids? What about the kids who school is their only safe haven, the only place where someone will notice that they're not eating, that they're dirty every day, that they have bruises on them, that their behavior has changed so drastically that something has to have happened? What about those children? What about the ones we fought for last year? Is that the last time things like that are ever going to happen? Is this the end of our chances of coming together again to help fight for justice for a child? I don't know about this, you guys.
Believe it or not, while the world is being told to wear masks and stay at least 6 feet away from one another, the sex trafficking business hasn't slowed at all. Liz Crawford shows us how one local outreach is working even harder to rescue women from the predators who use them.
For people trying to escape from the sex trafficking business, local hospitals are often the first line of defense. That's what happened just last week to a woman in Tampa. Now, Connie Rose is executive director of Victims to Survivors, a local group that helps people who are being exploited. Connie took us along as she carefully tried to balance connecting with that woman while also maintaining social distance.
We have wipes, we have masks, we have gloves. We are going to be taking a survivor this afternoon to a new residential program that is very specific to survivors of sex trafficking, of human trafficking, where she will be able to get all the wraparound services that she so deserves.
The woman showed up at a Tampa hospital. The hospital tested her for COVID-19. She was negative. They called a hotline. The hotline reached Connie.
It is their choice. They are asking for help, and we are doing everything within our power to be able to still provide the services that they also still deserve. Sex trafficking, the selling of bodies, the buying of bodies does not stop. As a matter of fact, it has taken on a completely new face.
Predators are taking advantage of the extra time online to groom and lure children. Meanwhile, Connie Rose believes the added stress of the pandemic could lead to increased demand by buyers. That's why outreach can't stop.
And don't forget, most times the trafficker is someone the victim knows. This is in no way to disrespect the church, but the facts have to be told truthfully.
One lady even said that she was drafted by a mega church pastor's daughter. One lady even said that she was drafted by a mega church pastor's daughter. And see, the love of money is a funny thing. And somebody said, what's worse than a wolf in sheep's clothing? A wolf in shepherd's clothing. So sometimes there are wolves in the church. And they'll try to find the most broken people in the church because you're humble, you're trusting God. And I mean, hey, I'm almost 55, and I've been trusting the wrong people for many years. So it's not because you're young or old or whatever. Sometimes you're just trusting. You think that because you're honest, that everyone's honest, and that's not the case.
As the Tampa Bay area continues social distancing and a new safer at home policy, local nonprofits are concerned about what that could mean for the people it helps. I-Team investigator Kylie McGivern has the details on what one organization is doing for outreach during the pandemic.
Sail of Freedom, a nonprofit based in Sarasota, can no longer meet in person with all of the human trafficking victims they serve. So The group is moving its educational training online.
70% of sex trafficking in minors starts online.
The classes are geared toward middle and high school students and parents and warn about human traffickers luring kids online. Kyra Montague of Sail of Freedom says these trainings are more important now than ever, especially with so many kids spending more time online.
We want to talk about what that initial contact looks like from someone that they may meet online, and how to navigate those types of conversations so that they aren't being exploited or not being taken advantage of while they're spending so much time at home.
Check the description box for links to these online classes.
Hey, what's up everybody? Andrew Dawson here, and I hope you're having a good day amidst all of the crazy news that we're experiencing right now. It's getting wild, but fear not. We've had a lot of people ask us, how is the coronavirus affecting human trafficking in the United States? How is it affecting this industry? And to be honest, we're all a little bit new to this, but what we do know is that everything is going online. Churches are going online, businesses are going online, and we've seen a huge increase in online ads, as well as pornography sites increasing and doing what they can do to just continue their industry. We hate that, but that's the truth of it. And today I want to give you just a few pointers, a couple tips on how to keep your family safe in the midst of this crisis. We have to deal with this virus, but that doesn't mean that predators, sexual predators, are going to stop doing what they do. And so I want to give you a couple pointers on how to stay safe in this time with your family. And the number one thing I can tell you today is to continue monitoring online activity with your kids. I think that's a huge issue we have to pay attention to. As everything increases online, there's more of a temptation to let down the guards, let our kids FaceTime with family and friends, let our families Zoom in and do Zoom calls, and everything's moving online. We're playing video games online, and we're searching online. Some of us are doing school online. Our schools have moved to an online platform, and so we really have to continue being diligent in online activity with our kids. And some of the ways we can do that are shutting down our internet at night at a certain time and saying, hey, we're past this point, we're not going to have internet in our home. Another way you can do that is to have a group charging station for your family where everybody brings their cell phones and their iPads and their computers, and we just charge everything here as a family. Maybe it's in your room as a parent or a specific location where your kids can't get access to it, but we're going to bring it together. That way there's no temptation at night to access that or to start conversations that can potentially be harmful to our kids in the future. And then again, the last tip I got for you is have a conversation. Have a conversation with your kids about the potential dangers out there. There's a ton of resources online. I can link some below this video, but do your due diligence in this time. As online activity increases, so will sexual predators and sexual exploitation increase online as well. And again, I always say this, rules without relationship don't work. Build a relationship with your kids, because if we have a relationship, then there's that respect, and then rules are followed even more.
A little timeline recap. On February 1st, SCUMP signed an executive order that was supposed to help combat human trafficking in the United States. So far, personally, I haven't seen any efforts made whatsoever to do that, other than the fact that we're sending children back to countries where they were probably seeking asylum to us because of sex trafficking. Like, that is why the asylum was created in the first place. But nonetheless, he signed the executive order and everyone was happy. But yet those of us outside the media never really even heard anything about it. Then on March 24th, Alexandria Cortez called ICE out for trafficking kids. And the report I read does tell us that 3,000 kids disappeared out the clear blue sky. So, is this related? I mean, seriously, is this related? And then 400 migrant kids were deported out the clear blue sky. And this is just maybe a week later, 2 weeks later. I don't know. Less than a week after that, a border agent gets arrested for being a part of a sex trafficking ring. I mean, seriously, who are we protecting here? And I understand we have to be concerned about COVID-19. I get that. However, who's protecting these kids? Because it definitely ain't President Scum. Spicy out.